lovely gentleman sat right here and tried to erase it, literally sitting next to me, literally. So and even doing the comparison, saying, would you rather go to China or not go to China? Are you a veteran? So that means you never raised the pause means no. So that means he never raised his hand to say, I'm willing to die for this country. Let's stop talking about just the Dow. Not only was I willing to die for this country, both of my grandparents were.
Thank you for your service.
That's right. Thank me for my service. So how dare he sit here and ask, it's called America. You can't point nothing out.
I want to say this. If you were on the Abby Phillips show Chinese version, you wouldn't be here tomorrow.
But I'm not the Chinese version. I'm here with the American version.
All right.
The black. I know, and I'm saying it. And I'm saying it, and I'm enjoying it, and I fought for mine and yours. So thank me for my service.
All right, my friends, listen.
Thank me for my service. I'm not disparaging. I just want you to thank
me. Let me say this clearly. When you question a veteran's patriotism because they dared to criticize America, you've already lost the argument. Kevin O'Leary thought he was being clever by pivoting to China. He thought that by asking, what country would you rather live in? He could corner Tezlyn Figaro into silence. But that's not how this works. Loving your country does not mean lying about its history. It does not mean pretending slavery was just a chapter we can skim past. And it definitely does not mean staying quiet when people try to erase the uncomfortable parts. What you just saw wasn't disrespect toward America. It was someone demanding that America live up to its own promises. There's a huge difference. And if that difference makes people uncomfortable, maybe that discomfort is the point. Stick with me through this entire clip because it only gets more intense from here. And if you believe patriotism includes accountability, not blind loyalty, make sure you drop a comment below. I want to know where you stand on this.
Tonight, a federal judge is ordering the Trump administration to restore exhibits about slavery in Philadelphia. Invoking George Orwell's novel 1984, Judge Cynthia Roof accused the government of disassembling historical truths. Last month, the Park Service removed explanatory plaques from the brick walls of the Philadelphia home where George and Martha Washington lived. Those plaques included biographical details about the 9 people enslaved by the Washingtons at the presidential mansion and a historical timeline of American slavery. It's fitting, we were just talking about George Washington setting an example by leaving the presidency, but the truth is also that George Washington was an enslaver. And trying to erase that, or even having an executive order that could be interpreted as allowing for that, that is, I think, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
Yeah, you can't erase history, unfortunately. Can't do it. And so it becomes part of the DNA of the country, and it's well known, and it's not going to be changed. I don't know the specifics of why they would tear this off a wall, whether that was a federal building or a private building or whatever. But every country has a conscience. Every country has horrific stories of its creation, the violence of it. But you should learn from the past. I mean, I'm a history buff. I go back and look at, I try and learn from, pre-First World War in terms of how Europe looks today. And I really enjoy that work, but I realize there's nobody that's perfect. Wow. It was a very violent society. Was violent from 2,500 years ago.
It's so interesting that you said that, because right before we went to break, you asked me what country was I living in. This one that we just went through.
You should be happy to live here.
The country that just did what they did. So for you to sit here and act like you just didn't say, what country are you talking about? What country, puts people in jail wrong? What country enslaves folks, which is pretty much the private prison system? What country does this? You can't possibly be a history buff. And
let me give you how bad it can be. The Romans used to burn to the ground.
You can't never give me how bad it could be. You could never give me how bad it could be. I live it on a daily basis, baby. I live it on a daily basis, honey.
They were bad dudes.
I live it on a daily basis. You could never tell me how bad it could be. But I would encourage you to actually be the history buff that you claim that you are, and really get some understanding. It's not about me. I'm not going nowhere. I'm staying right here.
You
don't need to give me no reason to try.
Kevin, I think the question here would be, guys, we don't have a ton of time in this segment. Go ahead.
How about that?
I think the question here is, does this administration want to erase history? Do they prefer a different version of history where white people look better and white people didn't have slaves. They're changing education. They're taking out Black history in a lot of states that they control. They are changing the history of place.
Oh, yeah, you're doing a good job
But that's
trying
the
to change
thing.
it.
I think Steve Bannon himself said history is written by the winners. I think right now they're the winners and they're trying to rewrite
The answer
history.
to your question is yes. This administration is trying to erase this history.
Yes.
They say so in their briefs. They say we don't want to present a picture of history at this spot in Philly that's going to be upsetting to people. We want a nice, clean version of American history. I agree.
Is it a federal building?
Yes.
Yes.
It's under contract with the Department of the Interior. There's a deal in place between the city of Philadelphia and the federal government that makes it a historical building. That's actually the legal basis that this judge, which I should add is a Bush nominee, this judge said you're wrong. You don't have the right to wipe this out through an executive order. So yes, they're trying to erase history, the wrong historically, the wrong legal.
And it's not the only place. The Park Service removed a photo of an enslaved man's scars. Trump said the Smithsonian focuses too much on how bad slavery was. And park employees are supposed to be flagging material that are deemed disparaging to the U.S. What are they so afraid of?
Yeah, I don't think we should erase history. To Kevin's point, we can't erase history, and those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. So obviously we need to acknowledge that this was a shameful chapter in American history. And I think, I don't know anybody who doesn't want to acknowledge that and acknowledge that that was a terrible, horrible chapter. I think it's interesting, though. I look at universities, and some of these people are so educated, and they don't have a love for America. And so I think I would love to see, in addition to acknowledging terrible moments in history, I'd also love to see the fact celebrated that America is really the only civilization that's ended slavery. And so I think we need to have both elements there.
Do you think I love America?
I'm sure you do.
No, I mean, do you? As a military veteran,
Of
I'm a
course.
veteran, do you think I love America?
Of
And do
course.
you also think that erasing what actually happened to my ancestors that actually fought for this
I
country
don't think
when they
it should
couldn't
be
even sit at land?
erased.
But it's not just about trying to erase it. It's about actually acknowledging and doing something about it. It's one thing for me to acknowledge something, and there's something else to sit here and act like there's nothing that needs to be corrected. This lovely gentleman sat right here and tried to erase it, literally sitting next to me, literally. So and
live in
even
a country where
and
you can
even
point
doing
out
the,
these
and
wrongs,
even
and they
and
are your-
even doing the comparison, saying, would you rather go to China or not go to China? Are you a veteran? So that means you never raised the pause means no. So that means he never raised his
Wait a
hand to say,
second.
I'm willing to die for this country. Let's stop talking about just the Dow. Not only was I willing to die for this country, both of my grandparents
Thank you
were.
for your service.
That's right. Thank me for my service. So how dare he
I
sit here
thank
and
you for
ask
your
me?
service.
So how dare
And
he
I-
sit here and
I feel
ask me
proud
would
that
I
you're
rather
able
be
to
in China
raise
when
these
I was willing to
topics.
die for the country that is locking up the people that we're talking about. There are more black men enslaved than those who were enslaved in 1850 in the prison system right now in 1850 that did not actually get the due process that you guys are talking about, that actually had to take plea bargains because they could not afford adequate law attorneys, which is why I'm in law school, by the way, right now. Shout out to FAMU. So to sit here and ask me, what country do I live
Let me
in?
point
It's
something
called
out to
America.
you.
You can't point
Okay.
nothing
I
out.
do.
That's
I
what
want
you
to
keep
say
getting
this. If
confused.
you were on the
Last
Abby
word,
Phillips
Well, I
show
don't wanna hear
Chinese
it.
version, you wouldn't be
But
here
I'm not the
tomorrow.
Chinese version.
You're
I'm
in
here with the
America. You
American
get to
version.
say
All right.
these
The
things.
black. I know,
You
and I'm
should enjoy
saying
your
it,
freedoms.
and I'm saying it, and I'm enjoying it,
I'm
and I
proud
fought
that you
for
can
mine
say that.
and yours.
All
So
right.
thank me for my service.
All right, my friends, listen.
Thank me for my service.
Listen,
I'm not disparaging. I just want you to thank me.
We're going to bring this to a close. I mean, I do think it is worth acknowledging that you don't have to prefer China to say that I want to be able to, in this country,
I just
both
point out,
live in the
I'm
country
so-
and
we're
critique
so
it at
lucky
the
to
same
have
time.
these freedoms
Sure.
and be able. I thank
Yeah,
you for your service,
I
by
know.
the
That's.
way.
I think that she's actually saying the same thing. That she's expressing her right to criticize, to acknowledge the past and how bad
point
or
is
how good it
every
was.
time
So
somebody
I don't know that you guys
disparages a
are all that.
democracy, I
I don't
say,
know that you
where do
guys
you
are all
wanna
that
move
far.
to?
But nobody
Where do you
disparages
wanna go to?
democracy.
All
And I
right.
answered your question,
All
and you
right.
still didn't deal with
Thank
the
you,
issue
guys.
at hand.
Hey,
Next-
listen, I didn't serve.
next for
but
us.
I'm
So
proud
then you
to
should
tell-
be
The
quiet.
panel is
No,
going to
I
give
should
us
say
their
thank you for your
nightcaps.
service.
Here's what really happened in that moment, and let's not sugarcoat it. Kevin tried to shift the conversation from accountability to comparison. That's the move. Whenever the topic gets uncomfortable, slavery, systemic racism, incarceration, suddenly it becomes, well, at least we're not China. But that is a painfully low standard. The bar for democracy cannot simply be, we're not a dictatorship. That's not excellence. That's bare minimum. And Tezlyn refused to let that deflection stand. Notice how quickly the tone changed once she made it personal. The moment she said she was willing to die for this country, the entire argument shifted, because now it wasn't abstract. It wasn't about ancient Rome or broad historical theories. It was about lived experience. It was about sacrifice. And you do not get to question someone's love for America when they have literally put their life on the line for it. That's not debate. That's disrespect. And let's talk about this idea that America should be celebrated for ending slavery. Ending something you should have never done in the first place is not a moral victory lap. It's the correction of a moral failure. Accountability is not anti-American. Criticism is not anti-American. In fact, the very freedom to criticize is what makes democracy work. If people cannot challenge power, then what exactly are we defending? What made this exchange powerful wasn't just the volume or the emotion, it was the refusal to be redirected. Kevin wanted to zoom out and compare civilizations. Tezlyn zoomed in and said, no, we're talking about this country right now. That's why the room felt tense. Because when someone refuses to play along with the deflection, the conversation becomes real. And here's the bigger issue. There is a growing push to sanitize history, to smooth it over, to make it more comfortable, to present a version of America that looks polished and spotless. But strength does not come from pretending flaws don't exist. Strength comes from confronting them head on. Germany teaches its darkest history, so it never repeats it. Democracies survive when they tell the truth about themselves. The moment you start hiding the truth, you weaken the foundation. So no, criticizing America is not betrayal. Demanding better is not disloyalty. And refusing to let history be erased is not hatred. It is participation in democracy. It is engagement. It is ownership. That's why this moment mattered. Because it exposed the difference between pride and propaganda. And if we can't tell the difference, then we're already in trouble. What's your take? Was Kevin making a valid comparison, or did Tezlyn completely dismantle that argument? Drop your thoughts below. I read the comments and I want to hear your perspective on this one.